Boy, this harvest just keeps on coming. Today I'm going to do a tutorial on how to can crushed tomatoes. So today is Saturday and I have a whole bunch of tomatoes that I need to do something with. And I thought at first that I'd make some more marinara, but you know what? I've made 2 big batches and you can always use crushed tomatoes for something, and this will be packed in their own juice. I'm not going to add water or anything else except a little bit of lemon juice to make sure the acidity's up. And I do test it anyway with my pH test strips. So I've got a whole lot of tomatoes. So I'm going to start putting these in boiling water and taking the skins off, and then I will be putting them into another pot to just slightly boil and cook them down, and then I'm going to can these. So I'll be showing you what I do, and hopefully this helps. Alright, the very first step is I'm going to blanch the tomatoes, which means dropping them in boiling water and leaving them usually takes about 60 seconds, I think. Maybe a little less, so that I can peel these. So what I'm going to do to make that easier is I'm just going to run a slit around it. Shallow, it didn't have to be deep, but you just want to cut a really thin strip all the way around. That way, as it's blanching, it doesn't need to cook. We're going to cook this a little bit anyway, and then it's going to go in the canner and get cooked more. All I'm trying to do here is facilitate popping the skin off as easily as possible, because anybody that's done this knows this could be a real pain. So before I drop them in the boiling water, I'm going to cut a slit around these. And some people just do an X, some people will go all the way around both directions. I don't know. I'm just going to go all the way around one direction. I think that's going to be plenty. And I'll show you how I blanch them and then how I peel them. Alright, I got my water just simmering, and I'll adjust it as I need to. And this is my spider that I'm going to use. You can use a slotted spoon, whatever you have. I like this because it drains so quickly. But I'm just going to drop the tomatoes, and you could put them in carefully yourself, like that, but I could splash, so I just do this. It's quick. Just drop them in there. I'm not going to set a timer because mostly I'm just watching them. And when I see the skin start to loosen, that's when they come out. So there's, don't overthink it. Just put them in there. Keep an eye on it. And as soon as you see the skin loosen, pull them out and put them in cold water. They say an ice bath, but for me, ice is limited, and so as long as my water's cold, which it is, I don't worry too much, and I'll just change that water out when it starts to warm up, which with as many tomatoes as I have, it's gonna get warm, so it's no big deal. So you just kind of move them around a little bit. You don't have to stir or anything like that. I think it's best just so that all the sides are moving around a little. And what you'll see is where I've slit, it will start to separate. And that's when you know that it's getting close. For example, this is hot. This has opened up just a little bit, so you know that that skin is now getting loosened. So just, okay. just a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to try and show you, but it may be hard to see. That has separated, well, not quite a 1/4 inch, but you'll also see the skin is kind of puckered right here. And again, I don't know if you can see that. That tells you they're ready to pull out. They also tend to float more. So now you just pull them out, put them in the cold water, and you leave them till they're cool enough to handle. That's really all you're doing. So I'm taking those out, and then I'll be putting another batch in. And this, I'm going to do this to all the tomatoes. So I'm going to move you back over and show you how I peel these. All right, so here I'm going to show you the peeling, and I'm going to put them in this small pot as I peel them, only to transfer them to a large stainless steel pot on the range, just because in my kitchen it works easier that way. If I had a space that worked right next to it, I'd do that, but I've got too many things going at once, so I just will use this pan to take it over and put in the larger pan. So now we've got these. They're not cool, but they are not too hot to handle. And I'm just going to take a paring knife and grab the edge and pull that skin off. And sometimes around the stem or blossom end, you might have to cut that part away. But for the most part, I don't know if I can, you're seeing this. Most part, you just grab it with your knife and it pulls right away. So once I pull the skin off, and I'm going to have it everywhere, and I just did, then you're going to inspect your tomato, and anything that is not perfect, you're going to cut away. So we're going to cut away the stem. There was a little crack. I'm going to take that out. Some discoloring. Just pull it off. Chickens will get all of that, so it's not going to go to waste. And they love it. So now I have this. I'm going to cut this in quarters for what I'm doing. Sometimes you'll leave them whole. It just depends what you're doing. But in my case, I'm going to cut them in quarters. And they're going to go into the large stainless steel pot. And I'm going to put about 2 cups in there, and then I'm going to smash those some. They don't have to be perfect. That's just to release juices to start the little bit of cooking that we're going to do. It's just going to keep it from burning and sticking. So I'm going to go through and do this to all of those tomatoes. And I'll show you the next step when I get there. And by the way, this is a really messy process. Alright, so I've got the start that I'm going to put in the other pan. I'm smashing it in this because it's smaller. It's going to be easier. And I don't want to get it all dirty, so all I'm going to do is take a potato masher and just slightly smash. I don't need them thoroughly mashed up. I just want to break up the pieces a little bit and get that juice started. So you can see I now have a lot more juice. That's going to allow this to really start cooking and get the other tomatoes cooking easily, so I don't have to do this to every bit. I'll probably add, about the same amount more, only because I'm using a very large pot. But I'm gonna do one more of these and then get these two simmering, and then I will stop smashing them and just start adding quarters. All right, so this is what that sink full of tomatoes looks like after taking the skins off and peeling them, quartering them, and now I'm putting them in there, and I just want to bring it up to a boil and boil for 5 minutes, and then I'll be putting it in jars. And over here, that's what all the skins and little pieces that came off of them looks like. A lot of tomatoes. All right, so I have brought this to a boil. I've let it boil for 5 minutes. Now I'm going to turn it way down just to keep it hot, because this may take 2 batches. Probably will. This is a lot of tomato. So what I want to do, just to show you, there's a lot of controversies on tomatoes. They are considered high acid, but you're also advised to always add lemon juice or citric acid, because modern varieties may not be acidic enough. So what I have here is pH test strips. Now these are in the pharmacy department because they say they're for saliva and urine. You may be able to get the ones for aquariums. I'm not sure what range they are. But what we want to see is that this is below 4.6 pH. I am going to also still add the lemon juice, but I want to just test it and see. This is just tomatoes. I have slicing tomatoes and I've got romas in here. Just no special amounts, it's just what was ripe, and I want to do something with it. So we're going to test this. So I'm going to put it in here and wave it around a bit, and it's really hot so you can see it sort of melts this little plastic strip. But this is without any additional acid from lemon juice or from citric acid. Now what you want to do is then take that strip and match it against the jar. And what I want to show in my case, and this is maybe not going to be the same, but you can clearly see it, the middle is a dark yellow. I hope you can see that. So if you look at that compared to 4.5, this looks to me like it is lower pH than 4.6, even lower than 4.5. I'm still going to add the lemon juice. It's not worth it to me to risk it. But I just thought I'd throw that out there. You even are supposed to do this if you pressure can these. I'm going to water bath today, but I just wanted to show that because I do test my foods to check the pH before I can it. It doesn't hurt, and it might save me some hurt down the line. So I've got hot tomatoes, which means we need to have hot jars. Let's see if I can get you down here to see what I'm doing. So I took out my hot jar. Anytime you have hot food, you need to put it in hot jars. If you are raw packing and it's cold, on the other hand, you always put it cold. It's going to go in hot water bath because this is hot. If you were putting something, usually pressure canning, if it's going to be a cold like meat, then you'll have a cold canner. You won't start with hot. So the first thing I'm going to do before I dish this out is I'm going to add 4 pints, and that, to me, that's what my family's going to use, is pints. So for that I add 1 tablespoon of bottled lemon juice, and use bottled because it's consistent. It's a consistent acidity, and then that way you know it's safe. So now I'm going to fill my jar after the lemon juice to about 1 inch headspace. Half inch. I don't know what I said. It said the ball recipe says to do a generous half inch. I'm not sure what they mean by that, so I'm just going to go slightly under half inch. And that's important. So you fill your jar. And now I'm going to debubble. You always debubble. You want to make sure that there is nothing in there, no air bubbles that are going to cause you a problem later. The jar doesn't heat correctly or whatever. So I've done that. Forgot to get a paper towel. And I'm going to take that and completely clean. Just the rim is all that's necessary. You can clean more of the outside, but honestly, you just have to make sure that rim is completely clean. And then run your finger one final time around the rim, just to make sure that you don't have any nicks or cracks that might affect your seal. And I have my lids, even though they don't require it, I have them in hot water. So I place that on there. Put on the ring finger tight. Now this is going to go in, again, it's a hot canner. And yes, it's hot, but the ring is not, so for now I can lift it. And again, another hot jar. Put my funnel in. Add 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. And use bottled, but trying to squirt it out of the bottle into a tablespoon is just more trouble than it's worth. Makes a big mess. So this is what I do. And again, to 1/2 inch headspace. Debubble. And sometimes you need to add a tiny bit more because there might have been a bubble, and that will lower the volume. And if you have one of these nifty little tools, you can check the amount and see. Right here is 1/2 inch. That would be 1 inch, half. So you can check it that way. You kind of get to know it after a while, after enough jars of canning. So wipe your rim. You don't want anything left on that rim that might cause the seal to fail. And now run your finger around it, make sure there's no nicks or scratches or anything like that. Put on your lid. Finger tight. Boy, that one is kind of hot. So I'll put this in the canner. So my canner will hold 9 of these pint jars, the regular mouth. So I'm going to fill all these, and then I will bring you back when I'm ready to do the next steps. Alright, so I've got 9 pint jars filled with my crushed tomatoes that have nothing in them but tomato and lemon juice. I don't add salt. You can, but it's strictly for flavor, and I prefer to have all my options open when it comes time to use these. That is why I usually won't add seasonings to crushed or whole tomatoes, because I don't want to be limited, and that limits you. So I've lowered these into the water, but what I've seen is I need about 2 inches of water over the top of my jars. So I had hot water with with vinegar in it that I kept my lids in to soften them. So now what I've done is added that to my canner, which already had hot water, and I had put a splash of vinegar in it. And the vinegar is there because it will keep your jars from getting cloudy from hard water. So I'm on a well, we filter our water, but we still can have things, so it makes it a lot easier to clean your jars after you're done. So I've got these in here. I've got a couple of inches of water over the top. Let me just go ahead and pour the rest. It's not going to hurt it, but I've got at least 2 inches. So now I'm going to turn the temperature up. And on my range, that's going to be just above medium. Most ranges, you're going to put it up higher. But this thing's pretty intense, so I don't like to boil it that fast. So I've got my jars in. I'm going to put the lid on. Once this starts to boil, then I am going to start timing. And for pints, this is 35 minutes, but because of my altitude, I add 10 minutes. So I have my timer set for 45 minutes. And once this comes up to a boil, I start timing and just keep an eye on it. All right, so I have processed this for the 35 minutes plus 10 for my altitude. And then I turned off the heat and removed the lid. I wanted to give the jars a time to kind of equalize before I pull them out and set them on the counter. So after I took the lid off, turned off the heat, I let them sit for 5 minutes. So now these are ready to pull out. And you want to do this without tipping the jar because you don't want anything to siphon out. So if there's water on the top of the jar, that's okay, it'll dry. So I'm going to take these out, let them sit on the counter 24 hours. They are still going to be boiling inside, they're going to be hot. I want them to completely cool. And aren't these beautiful? And you want to set these on the counter on a cloth so you're not putting it directly on a cold countertop because that could shock the jars and you don't want to do that, they could break. So you put them on a cloth and you give a little space in between each one, and you don't want it in a big draft. You just want them to gradually cool.
Yum, yum, yum.
So that's it. I'll show you what they look like on the counter. Okay, so I've got 9-pint jars of crushed tomatoes in their own juice with just a little bit of lemon juice. And now I have more left, so I think I'm going to do a few quarts, and I will do as many as I have sauce left. Then I think what I'm going to do is fill some empty jars with water and sterilize it, because that's always good to have on hand. Okay, so I'm going to do these the same way that I did the pints, And the only difference is I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of lemon juice for each quart instead of 1. You still leave 1/2 inch headspace, and I've kept this all nice and hot so it's ready to go. But you do this the exact same way. The only difference after this is once I put it in the canner and it comes up to the boil, quarts you process for 45 minutes. And I will add another 10 minutes for my altitude. So these will be in the canner at a boil for 55 minutes. And that's the only difference. But now I'm going to have some quarts and some pints. Most of the time I'm only going to use a pint, but every once in a while, like for the family recipe for spaghetti sauce, these will come in perfect. So they're going to be reserved for that. Alright, so out of that huge pot of my tomatoes from my garden, I got 9 pints and I got 4 quarts of tomatoes. And this is all that was left, that little bit. So that was almost perfect. I have 3-quart jars in here that are taking up this empty space, and I just filled them with hot water, and they're going to keep these jars from rattling around, but they're also just going to be sterilized water in case I ever need it. I have it, I can pull it out and use it. So now I'm going to put this on and let it come up to the boil, and then it calls for 45 minutes for quarts. So adding my 10 minutes, that's going to be 55 minutes that I let this boil. And then when that's done, I'm going to have all this lovely tomato, crushed tomato, to put on my shelf. Nothing added but that little bit of lemon juice to keep it safe. And I know what's in these jars and how it was planted and raised and harvested. I know that it's safe. So thank you all for watching, and I hope you all learned or enjoyed this. So I hope you have a wonderful day. Okay, here's the result. There's one more quart of water a little further over. I ran out of room on my towel. I didn't want to crowd things. But I have 9 beautiful jars of crushed tomatoes in their own juice, and I have 4 quarts of the crushed tomatoes in their juice. And I tasted the little bit that was left. I cut that so close, it may have been an eighth of a cut. So I tasted that, and oh my gosh, these things are so tasty. They have so much flavor. So I hope you give this a try. How many cans of tomatoes do we buy all year round? This is tomato that I won't have to buy, and I know where it came from and how it was grown. So, can't wait. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, I hope you give me a thumbs up and subscribe and share it with your friends. Have a wonderful week.